Okay, this is Sherry Baker coming to you. I'm at the home of Maxine Bowling Friedly in Cleveland, Tennessee. And Maxine is 93 years old. And what year were you born?
1924.
1924. And Maxine, tell us who your father was.
My father was Guy Leon Bowling, the son of Marcus Delaney Bowling and Mary Ballard.
Okay, and Marcus Delaney Bowling ran a hotel in Berea.
Yes.
And
back in the, I think in the early 20s.
Okay, and there was an incident that happened in that hotel that we looked up and we found out that Marcus, and you had told me that this was an incident. It happened at the Continental Hotel. And
the commercial.
Oh, the commercial hotel, right.
Yes.
And that it was Sam and Enderman Baker who were evidently drinking on the premises, and you tell the story.
I don't know the Bakers, of course. I
Right.
don't know much about them.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, it was in the newspaper where I read it. Of course, I'd heard the story all of my life that that he was shot by these men, one of these men, and the man one of them had said they were going to kill everybody in the hotel. And of course, my grandfather had to try to protect everybody there.
Mm-hmm.
And but anyway, he was shot first, and then he had his gun, and he shot the other man, one of the Bakers, and it killed him. And my grandfather had to lie for a long time to heal from the gunshot that was right by his heart. And it would have killed him instantly if it had been just a tiny bit more to the side.
Right, and we did find some subsequent newspaper articles about that whole incident. Reportedly, the Bakers were drinking and causing commotion, which is what you just stated. And I'm sure your grandpa probably had a hard time.
Oh, he had a hard time getting over that, too.
Right, yeah.
He did not want to kill anyone.
Right, yeah. So Marcus Delaney evidently got his name from the old Delaney Bowling, who we know was a brother, one of the sons of the old Jesse Bowling, and Mary Elizabeth Pennington, whose line you descend from, and you descend from the same line that Hurley Bowling descended from, which was Elijah Bowling and Susanna Roberts, right? And when you were born, you never knew your father.
No.
Is that correct?
Yes, he died in November before I was born.
Right.
The next year, which looks odd when you see it written down, you know. Okay,
and this picture that I'm bringing over to you is a picture of his brother. Is that correct?
This is a picture of my father's brother.
Mm-hmm. And his name was, let me see if I can't zoom in on that there. Okay, yeah. His name was Grover Bowling.
Yes.
And he served during World War I.
Yes.
And he lived a long life, or?
He had evidently gotten tuberculosis.
That's right. That's what I remember you telling me.
He was in the Army.
Oh.
And he was sent to New Mexico to a federal hospital where he died.
Oh.
From it.
Yeah, that's sad. That's sad. So, how many of your father's siblings? I mean, did you have the chance to know any of your father's?
I knew one, and it was his sister, Addie.
Mm-hmm.
Her name was Addie Bowling Fugate. She married Rush Fugate.
Rush Fugate?
Yes.
See, that's one of my lines, the Fugate line.
Yes, I think that probably it is.
Mm-hmm.
And they have a daughter that's still living, She's
Wow.
97 years old.
Where does she live at?
She lives in Richmond in a place for older people.
Richmond, Kentucky?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Huh. Wow.
But she has a hard time remembering things now.
Right.
And her daughter, one of her daughters lives in Florida, and the other one lives over around Nashville.
Right. So you're you had the opportunity. Evidently, longevity runs in your family. Because evidently, yeah. So your mother's people were from Jackson County, Kentucky. Is that right?
No, my mother's people were from Rockcastle County.
Oh, okay.
Yes, in Broadhead.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where some of them still live today.
Oh, wow. Okay. So who was president of the United States when you were born? You don't know? You remember?
I don't remember now.
Well, who was the first president you do remember?
I don't know.
You were around when Dwight D. Eisenhower was president.
Oh, sure.
So you remember the Eisenhower, you lived through World War II.
Yes.
And you remember things that happened during World War II. Is there anything significant about World War II that you do remember in your own family?
Well, my first husband went through 5 battles in
Wow.
World War II, and I have the map that shows where each battle was fought
Wow.
that he was in.
Was he in the Army or?
Yes, he was in the Army Engineers.
Okay.
And they were out front, in front of the other people
Right.
a lot of times, building bridges and roads.
Wow. Yeah.
And
So
he had some close calls, I think.
well, I'm sure he did. Wow. So, So, and you've actually outlived two of your husbands, right? All of your husbands.
Yes, I had 2 more husbands, and they both had cancer when they died. And
Right.
there were Marvin Miller
Mm-hmm.
and Charles Lewis Friedly.
Yeah. Yeah, and I know that had to be hard for you both times. It had to be difficult.
Well, I always hate to hear of anybody having cancer.
Well, that's for certain.
Because
Cancer
I
is a
had to
terrible,
watch-
terrible thing.
I had to watch both of those.
Right. So you have one daughter, Janine,
Yes, she's
And-
from my first husband.
right? And she's actually married to a Bowman and has got Bowman blood in her veins also. So your great-grandfather was Elihu Bowling, who married Armina Bowman.
It's
Armina, excuse me. Right. And you have pictures of Armina and Elihu that we've seen that are on the Three Forks of the Kentucky River Historical Associational site, is used the contributor, but Armina comes from the same line as the Crawfords, Nicholas Bowman.
Yes, I think so.
Yeah, I think she is. I think she was. I can't remember exactly what, but she does come from the old Nicholas Bowman.
Was her husband Joseph, or her father? I mean Joseph.
Yeah, I think so. Son of Nicholas Bowman and Elizabeth. Yeah, he was married to a Moore.
Yes.
Right.
We have more.
And Joseph Bowman married a Crawford. Is that correct? I think I'm right. I'm pretty sure I'm right. I mean, I do know that Nicholas Bowman's line, he had a son Elijah who married a gentry. He had that's that same line that goes back to the old Cornelius.
Yes.
So, Maxine, that makes us cousins 2 ways, through the Bowmans and through the Bowlings. And You were at the memorial service for Jesse Bowling when Bowlingtown was deemed at Buckhorn, weren't you?
When it got its new name.
Exactly. You were there with Harley, and you were responsible for helping get all that established and recognized, were you not?
Well, we got Jesse Bowling's memorial stone.
Mm-hmm.
We asked for contributions from
Right.
different ones, and we got them. And he was responsible for where it was put. But a lot of people think that he's buried right there, but we don't know exactly where he was buried.
Well, we don't, but before Harley passed away, sadly a couple of years ago, he told me that he no longer believed that he was buried where he originally thought. That he thought that he found some record of where he was living near Justice, where Justice is buried.
Yes.
And I think that's in Breathitt County, what is now Breathitt County. He thinks that that's where Jesse Bowling is buried. But fact remains, as there is a monument there in Bowlingtown. Jesse Bowling did live there. He was a highly revered man, a spiritual leader, elder of the community.
Was he a county clerk?
I'm not sure if he was a county clerk or not. I know he was a justice.
Yeah.
I mean, he fought in the Revolutionary War, and I've also discovered he was actually named as sergeant in Wilkes County, so he was a sergeant in the Wilkes County militia.
Uh-huh.
His father, Benjamin, shows up there in the, I think it was 1782, the 1782 tax record. You find Benjamin Bowling living there, but he's not paying any taxes, which means Benjamin was living there, but he didn't own any land. He was simply there to see his sons and his grandchildren. And it was probably not too long after that he left and went to Virginia. At least that's my theory. I mean, he doesn't show up there anymore. He's not there after 1787. He's gone. So I can only, or 1782, I mean, he's gone. So I can only assume that he probably went, he either went down to South Carolina for a while and then went back to Virginia because he was in South Carolina for a while. I mean, one of his children was born in South Carolina. And I think that's where he got married to one of his wives, was there. And he was more than likely there for land. Like most of the men that went to Georgia, they went there for the land patent. But so you worked, tell us where you worked.
I worked for the state of Kentucky
Mm-hmm.
for 32 years. I started in 1950.
Mm-hmm.
And I was working for the Division of Engineering.
Oh.
And we had lots of engineers and lots of people typing. and the reason that I got the job was they needed typists. And I had taught myself to type.
Wow.
And I had never had it in school or anything, but I knew how to do it correctly. So I got a job. And I didn't take the exam for a month. They needed too badly.
Right.
And at that time, they had 2 tuberculosis hospitals in Kentucky. And tuberculosis was so bad at that time, they were building 3 new ones. And of course, they always had their own farms and things like that went with the hospitals to take care of their patients. And that's the first time I ever heard of a cow parlor.
A cow parlor.
A cow parlor.
No.
And that is a place where they milk the cows.
Oh, okay.
Automatically.
Wow.
So anyway, we were typing the specifications for those bids to get the bids. And they were sent out, and a certain time was told to open the bids, and the people that were bidding
Well,
had to get them in.
do you remember who the governor of Kentucky was then? You don't? Okay. All right. After you served 32 years in that department, you became a Kentucky colonel?
But that was at the last.
Yeah, that was at the last. That was the icing on the icing on, and you didn't know that was going to occur, did you?
No.
And it was signed by the only woman governor of the state of Kentucky, wasn't it?
Martha Lane Collins.
Wow. Wow. And so...
Yes. And I was really surprised to get that.
So, and you left Kentucky when?
About in 2010.
Okay, so you've been here in Tennessee for 7 years?
Over 7 years.
Yeah, and I'm sure I know you miss Kentucky.
Well, I get all the news from my church, and I get the news from my little town, which is on Facebook.
Uh-huh, yeah, okay.
And we also had a tornado in our town once that took my house and a lot of the buildings and things there, so it's not like it used to be.
Well, no, honey, nothing is anymore, is it? Nothing's really nothing like it used to be. So, what year did that? How old were you? Do you remember what year that tornado hit?
1974.
1974.
April the 3rd.
Wow.
We'll never forget that.
I'm sure. Took your house and everything. Oh, that'd be devastating.
I wasn't in it though.
Well, that's a good thing. Losing your house though was you know.
Well, it didn't it just blow it away, but
Right.
it ruined it to the place where
you couldn't.
they totaled it.
Oh, well.
And we left town the day they bulldozed it.
Oh. Left town. I would have been heartbroken. So you obviously rebuilt then. Anyway,
I also saw bank robbers once that robbed our bank.
Well, now tell us about that.
In that little town that we lived in, of 500 people.
Mm-hmm.
And a friend of mine that was just a boy then, and but he grew up and he always heard the story
Right.
of the bank robbery. And,
Is that what you have in your hand right there? Is the story of that bank robbery?
Yes, and he did this book, and in the front of it, he has a picture of me and him.
Well, I swear. Let's see. Let me see that so I can hold it to the camera.
And what he wrote me down at the bottom.
Oh. Okay, let's see if we can get a shot of this picture. Okay. There's Maxine and the gentleman who wrote this. And it's talking about Maxine Bowling Friedly, an eyewitness to the Stamping Ground bank robbery. And Ben Calvert, author of the story. And he says, to Maxine, thanks for the inspiration in the newspaper article. That really got me started in there in writing the story. I hope you enjoy reading it. I appreciate your friendship over the past 73 years. Wow. Ben Calvert, June 29th, 2010. And it's a story about the Stamping Ground Kentucky bank robbery, which happened November 28th, 1932. So tell us what exactly you remember about that event when that happened, Maxine.
Well, my mother and I had started across the street to put the groceries in the car, which is parked on the other side. And as we stepped out between the cars on our side of the street to go across, this car was coming down the road, and my mother pulled me back because it was so close to the cars we were next to, that she was afraid it was going to touch us. Yes, and the men looked so strange because they had their hats pulled down over their eyes. And of course, the sun was shining. It was later on in the afternoon, you know. And so she said, you know, they look suspicious or something. And they did. They went down to the bottom of the hill and turned around, came back and parked in front of the bank. And so we put the groceries in the car and came back to the grocery store, which was across the street from the bank, and watched what was going on. And she said, I believe they're going to rob the bank. And the grocery man said, they wouldn't fool with the little old bank. Like we didn't have enough money in the bank for anybody to bother, you know. But anyway, that's what they did. One stayed in the car, and one kind of stood around outside, and I think 2 or 3 went in the bank, 2 maybe. Anyway, they asked them to put their hands up, and this one, the cashier, evidently put his hands down to get up, and one of them thought he was going for a gun, so he shot him.
Oh.
And he shot him up here, I think, someplace around in the shoulder, and they thought he would get over it, but it set up blood poisoning and then killed him. So when they went to trial, they caught him, and when they went to trial, they electrocuted too.
Lord have mercy.
They didn't beat around the bush with them.
Did you have to testify in court or anything?
No, I didn't, but my mother did.
Your mama did?
And it was the coldest weather. They wrapped me up in I was, of course, 8 years old, but they wrapped this blanket around me because it was so awfully cold, and took me over to my grandmother's house, and before they left, went up there.
Wow. Wow.
And
so, I mean, so they electrocuted the man who did it?
the one that shot was a young man.
Right.
And he had gotten into this bunch of older men, and the other one that they electrocuted was the leader.
Right.
And he was a mean man, they said, you know.
Yeah, that's, man, just wasted his life, and probably didn't even get that much money either, did they?
I don't remember how much they have, but it's in the newspaper. But what was so funny was that they went out driving, trying to get away, you know, and they got way on out down close to Frankfurt and ran out of gas. I thought, anybody that was going to rob a bank should fill up to, maybe they didn't have any money.
They probably, well, they obviously weren't the smartest bank robbers in the world. I mean, that's for certain. Probably, you're right, they probably had no money.
But there was, I think there was a customer in there too, and he ran a store up the street, Mr. Hall, and they put him in the vault and closed the door, which would not open, you know, till the next day.
Oh my gosh.
But the thing was that the vault did not have its own light. And they had to, they had a big long line with a bulb on the end of it that they took in through that door and hung it up in there to have a light. And that's what kept the door from locking completely.
Wow.
So as soon as the robbers left, they opened the door and called the doctor.
Right.
And so we saw Dr. Taylor go down the street to the bank, because he just lived up the street.
Right.
And it was a real exciting time for a little town of 500.
Wow. Yeah, that would have been, I can't even imagine witnessing a bank robbery. Especially in 1932.
Yeah.
That's amazing,
There
Maxine.
was a lot in the paper, and also he had, one of our young men at that time, maybe not born, I don't think he was born, maybe, and he has written a book about it.
Oh, really?
This little
Right.
booklet like
Mm-hmm.
here. And he has looked up where they're all buried and everything.
Right.
Everything he could find about them.
Right. Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah. Well, stuff like that should be recorded and remembered, I mean, especially things that happened back then.
He just grew up hearing the men talk about it.
Mm-hmm.
His father and all of them
Of
talking about
course.
it. And he, and I helped him with some of it. And that's the reason I have this free book.
Exactly. Hey, it's always nice when you get those free books. Yeah. I've colluded with several researchers as well, writing books for and it's always good to be able to help people out, especially if you have firsthand knowledge or if you can find information. In my case, it's always finding information and providing it to them. But in your case, you were an eyewitness. That's a lot different.
I've written several things because I wanted my daughter to have them.
Well, sure.
As soon as I wrote them, she got a copy.
Well, and that's, yeah,
And she has a book that
of all
she
your,
puts them in.
that's awesome. That's great.
Everything that I write to her about the family, she puts in that book.
Wow, that's great. Everybody should do that, I mean, they
Now,
don't,
I don't even know what's in the book.
Maxine.
I don't remember all this.
Bless your heart. Well, but but you did it. I mean, that's something that everybody should do, is document everything they know about their family and put it into, for their children, especially old pictures and stuff, and especially identifying old pictures. We have so many old pictures now, we have no idea who they are.
I do too, but I have a world of them in here.
Right. Yeah. Well, we'll be corresponding with you on the Facebook site, on the Three Forks, because you're a member there. And anybody that wants to correspond with Maxine, you can do so on the Three Forks of the Kentucky River Historical Associational website on Facebook. And also, I would encourage you to go to our main website, which is tfkrha.org.
You'll have to write that down for me.
I will, Maxine. And thank you, sweetie. I love you.
I love you too.